What is Flashpoint Campaigns Cold War? It is the latest installment in the Flashpoint Campaigns series. This is version 3.0. The game is a grand tactical combat simulation of Cold War warfare. It's set in Germany in 1989 in the summer, and it assumes that the Cold War went hot. You, as the player, take command of anything from a reinforced battalion to a strong brigade, possibly even better part of a division. The maneuver units are platoons and companies, and you play on a hex map with 500-meter hexes on an area that's 15 by 25 kilometers or bigger. And you fight the engagement for 4 to 14 hours. Changing weather conditions, there's electronic warfare, there's airstrikes, there's all kinds of things you might expect to see. Plus attack helicopters, my personal favorite. The game is a truly massive upgrade to what we put out in November 22. Every part of it has been reworked, touched up, fussed over. I'm thinking the user interface, the AI, the game mechanics, the data model, the content. Speaking of content, we have twice what we had with the last iteration, covering far more of the inter-German border than we did before. It's not complete, but it's much better. It can be played, as always, versus a computer, hot seat, the Matrix multiplayer, or classic play-by-email. So what makes Flashpoint Campaigns different? One of the key differentiators is that we started with a WeGo play system and modified it for C3 elements. WeGo is each side puts in their orders and then the turn is resolved simultaneously. C3 is command, control, and communications, and that's not always the same for everybody. It can vary with circumstances. So we look at factors that impact that and adjust the game turn lengths for each player accordingly. If your forces are in good shape, your headquarters is in good shape, you might have as little as 15 minutes between turns, between orders phases of your turns. If things are getting ragged and you're taking losses, especially at the HQ level, the turns can stretch out to 30-40 minutes. The turns are independent for each player, so that one side might play 15 while another has to wait 40, and it just ticks forward like that. You can get inside your enemy's command cycle. He can get inside yours. Second thing we do in that department is that we try to model realistic command delays. There's a hierarchy of headquarters involved between you and the ultimate beneficiary of your orders, and it takes time to get the orders through, to get them understood, communicated, coordinated, and people on their feet and moving. We model that, and you have to take that into account as a player. What this helps to show is that this war potentially was not just about the hardware, the equipment, who had the best gun sight or whatever. It was the human factor. It was who had efficient, organized staffs, who had trained well to fight on a modern battlefield with all the inherent confusion and chaos that results. This can make a difference to the outcome of the game. So what kind of content can players expect? We've rolled forward all of the Southern Storm content and added as much again to the new game. We've gone from 4 campaigns to 10. We've gone from 45 scenarios to over 100. There are more tutorials. The number of maps has gone from 45 to 81. The maps are all up and down the West German frontier, back into France in some cases. Everything's been reworked, touched, improved again. We've had multiple months of active playtesting of all these scenarios and campaigns, and we've never felt so confident as we do now on the quality of this initial release. In addition to that, we've working much harder to make it easy to discover what all the content is, where the map's located, what units are they, what does this kind of tank versus another kind of tank really mean to a player. So even if you're not an expert in the Cold War era, you can get up to speed much more easily. The new feature we're most proud of to introduce in this version of the game is the air assault. This is a kind of tactical transport where ground units get embarked on helicopters, flown to their destination, disembark, and then run wild. If it's available in a scenario, it changes everything. The variety of encounter now becomes much more subtle, much more complex, much more interesting. The Warsaw Pact had that extensively, but also NATO has a possibility, and we have a new scenario that features the US 101st Airborne conducting operations the other way. To highlight this, there's an entire campaign, USSR 2, where you get to use air assault extensively. So what are we doing for new players? It's really important when you're starting a new game is to find it accessible, to be able to find your feet quickly. And for that reason, we've given a lot more tutorial support than we did in the past. Once you've worked through those, you will have a good grounding in the game. Something else we try to do is to not require you to master complex mechanics before you even get started. And I'm thinking in particular of standard operating procedures applied at the unit level. We call them SOPs. And they can be used to modify the behavior of the units once the turn is resolving. I hasten to add that you don't need to change them. The game's gotten pretty good at setting correct SOPs, and you can just play with that for quite some time. Inevitably, you'll want to start modifying them. And the kind of modification you might be making is, well, what's my preferred engagement range if I spot the enemy? Do I open fire at long range or short range? Do I want to move away and avoid or not? And you can change these settings order by order in the game. We have a lot more presets. We've completely rewritten the user interface for this to make it more logical and intuitive. And like I said, the best of all, you don't even have to get involved if you don't want. If you do want, you can do very efficient changes to your units and really get them to fight the way you want them to fight. Beyond SOPs, I might mention the techniques for group orders. In the original game, each unit was given its orders individually. There can be a lot of units though. And what we want to do is be able to give orders to groups of units, especially a variety of different units by unit type, and get them to behave rationally. So we've created both the formation orders that you're familiar with from Southern Storm, but also just group orders, which are simpler but a lot more effective in getting a group of units from point A to point B in an organized way. I think that if you start to play with group orders, you will find it much more accessible to play the game. Finally, we've made some significant changes to pathfinding. Ground combat is all about the lay of the land, about the terrain, about maximizing it at all times, the benefit of it to you at all times, and to inflict penalties on the enemy by making them fight on ground not of their choosing. And so we spent time on pathfinding and to take advantage much more, and especially for helicopter forces, which fly typically nap of Earth, but really need to be smart about where they fly or they will not survive. So you'll see substantial improvements in that as well. There are 3 changes to the computer player that I'd like to highlight in particular. One of them is just an improvement in the computer player's situational awareness. Such a simple thing to say, but it involved a great deal of work on the back end. But you will see them doing fewer apparently stupid things as they give orders and play it out. Second thing they're much improved at is withdrawing. And that's almost the test of military skill. At what point do you withdraw? Do you stay and fight it out, or do you make a clean break? And if so, how do you time it? And we've made considerable effort focused on that to get units to withdraw more rationally. Third thing I'd like to highlight is fire support. Fire support is half the game. There's the maneuver, and then there's the fire support. And calling in fire support for computer players, or for the human player for that matter, it's controlled by the staff. The staff has to be more effective at getting timely fire of the right type and weight onto targets while they're still there. We've made big improvements in that. And one example of an improvement is that we now use illumination rounds at night. Several of the scenarios have a nighttime component, and the Warsaw Pact forces historically were quite blind at night. They did not have the thermal imaging that NATO had. But what they did have was a lot of illumination rounds. And so if they see fire coming from undisclosed NATO units at night, they will fire illumination rounds onto that origin hex to see if they can spot anybody. And you will see them lighting up and revealing NATO defenders, and they can then engage. Big difference, and transforms the whole night battle experience now for the Warsaw Pact player. We ship with the game the same editors that we used to create the scenarios and campaigns. Everything is there, and the existing scenarios are unlocked. So if you have an interest in creating content, you can take an existing scenario and modify it. You can create one from scratch, but that's a little more of a challenge. Take an existing one, add forces, subtract forces. You can change the setup areas. You can change the initial orders. You can change the initial SOPs. You can schedule air support to come in or not. You can change the electronic warfare levels in the background. Best of all, you can change or add to the battle plans. And the battle plans are per force, not the entire side, but the forces within the side. And you can say, okay, well, here's a tank company. I want it to set up in this set of hexes. I want these orders, these missions to apply. And then you save it. And you can then select it when you go to play the game next. And you are now playing your battle plan in the game. You can share it with your friends. You can post it. You can do anything you like with it. And other people will then enjoy the fruits of your work. In addition to editing scenarios, we expose all of the data files to you so you understand. You can make your own, but ours are locked. The maps are hard to make at this quality, but not impossible. But we strongly suggest you just use one of the 80 some odd that are supplied and just make it easy on yourself. Finally, modability. All of the art assets are there for you to see and change if you like. You can change the badges that the leaders have for the various military formations they're commanding. You can change the color of the map if you want to change that in a graphics editor. Silhouettes you can add, you can modify. There's a host of assets, including the sound files and the animations, that you can touch if that's your desire.